Hello everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. Just give me a second to toggle on the live streaming services and then we'll start. Just takes a second. Uh, All right, seems like we are live now. Hi, Akmal. Hi, everyone. And thanks for joining our webinar. It's called From JSON to Vectors, Building AI Search with SingleStore Kai. So, in this webinar, you'll learn more about SingleStore Kai and obviously how you can integrate and enhance your AI search within your projects. So, using JSON and vectors. And obviously, we have Akmal, who's a technical evangelist here at SingleStore with rich experience. And he's an expert in this domain, so feel free if you have any questions. Just you might see the Zoom Q&A button which is present at the bottom of your console. So currently you are in a listen only mode, but if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the Zoom Q&A button and get your questions answered in real time. And we will also have a dedicated Q&A session by the end of the session. So if there's anything that's specific and we cannot address it, feel free to just flag that and follow in real time, and that's how you will make the best out of the session. I will be providing the resources for everything in the chat. By the way, I'm Yukti. I'll be your host for the webinar today. I'm a growth engineer here at SingleStore, and I'll try to take care of most of the questions, but any questions that I'm not capable of answering, I'll redirect them to Akmal. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'll be posting the resources to everything in the chat, whatever you need. So just lay back, relax, or if you want to have a hands-on experience, feel free to utilize those resources. So Akmal, it seems like a slide is not updated. Can you refresh, please? So if you like this topic, this we have amazing topics that are also coming up in the future. I'm just waiting for Akmal to refresh the slide.
Oh, you're not able to see this
No,
one.
no, no. Yeah, just refresh it. I actually
Oh,
made
hang
some
on.
changes.
Let me
Seems
just
like
try
it's.
try that, and we can launch
Give me
this.
a second.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, there we
Yeah,
go. In real time.
yeah,
There we go.
yeah. That's fine. All right. So, okay,
It's
amazing.
in.
So you can just okay,
All
amazing.
right,
So what's
can I launch this again? There we
sure.
go. All right.
Amazing. So we have amazing sessions that are coming up. If you'd like this session, we are more than happy to have you in our future sessions. On May 19th, we have another webinar with Akmal. It's called Building Real-Time AI Apps on Streaming Data with Kafka. So if this topic is interesting to you, feel free to join the next topic because this topic has been always very popular. So we're hoping to see you guys there as well.
Um, you seem to have frozen there. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you
Oh, okay,
correctly.
you're back. You're back.
Oh yeah, I think. Oh, okay. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say. I'll go dark now, but I'll keep on putting everything in the chat. So keep an eye out, and we generally recommend that you follow along in real time, so you are able to make the most of your time. So and obviously get any questions that you have addressed. So yeah, but if you're not okay with that, you're not in the right. Or should I say the right setup right now and you're just watching passively, that's fine too. So yeah, stay tuned for the resources that I'll be putting. And Akmal, please take it away. Thank you everyone for joining.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Yuki. So it's one of the challenges of today is that we are so dependent on technology to work. So I remember a time, and I'm old enough when the internet was still very young. Okay, a long time ago, where you had to use FTP servers. That's how I used to get my download research papers. But anyway, that's another story. All right. So as Yuki mentioned, there are events in the pipeline, and here we go. Okay. So if you would like to, follow along in real time, little bit challenging. Okay. You need an OpenAI API key. However, Yuki will share all the resources with you. Okay. And I'll walk through the code with you as well. Okay, just show you. Now, I developed this code a little while back. Okay, so you will see reference to some older versions of packages. Not to worry. Okay, I did test it a little bit earlier. Still works, which is good. So All of that should be good. Okay, and so here is the link. Again, you see we'll share that. So if you have some means to scan the QR code, you can do that too. All right. And if you create an account, let me just quickly walk you through that before we move on. Okay, I haven't got too many slides, by the way. Okay, this week I've Occam's razor, even more slides cut than normal. So you will be taken to a page where you can create an account if you don't have one. Okay, I think it's singlestore.com. Another way to get there is singlestore.com/cloud hyphen trial. I think that will work as well. It will redirect you. If you haven't got an account, it'll just ask you a couple of questions, email address, okay, and your name, and it will just verify. I think it sends an email to that email address you specified just to confirm that you are really human. And once you do that and you've signed in, it will look something like this, okay? So you'll see on the left-hand side, there'll be a bunch of these kind of navigational controls. We're only going to use two of those today, actually. One of them is deployment, okay, here. And then under develop, there is something that, the studio, which I'm going to use in terms of just creating stuff. So there we go. Okay, so there you can see these things here, all right? So this is kind of like the home page where you're logged in. And you will see, okay, that if I've got a couple of windows open just so that it's easier for me to show it rather than having to constantly switch. But under deployments, as soon as you've logged in, you will see now, the thing is, I'm using a slightly different account from the normal account that I use for these webinars today, simply because I wanted to have something running for a little while. So I'm using a shared account with my colleagues in marketing. But what you'll see is that in this space here, if it's a new account, you will see that there is a workspace created for you and a database as well. They will be some randomized names given to these for you as well. That's fine. Okay, so that's like the free shared resource. As part of your sign up process, SingleStore provides you with $600 worth of credits, and that's very useful if you find that the shared tier is insufficient. Okay, it has some limitations, and maybe you need to create some additional resources. Okay, more memory, more CPU, and so on. And that's very easy to do. So all you need to do is go to the top here. Okay, again, let me just show you this, like so. Okay, and then you will see that there is this kind of arrow, down arrow kind of triangle. If you select that, you can see here there is something here called new deployment. Okay, so in here you can see that there are some shared tiers uh, being run by other colleagues at SingleStore. So because this is a slightly unique account, there's multiple shared tiers here, which is not the normal thing for an account that you would create. But under new deployment, if you go here, now you have the opportunity to configure something for yourself. Okay, so you can choose the standard tier here. Okay, by default, when you log in, you'll see that this starter is ghosted out, okay, because it's already created for you and you're only allowed one of these per account. There's a workspace group name here, okay, which again you can choose. So it's pre-filled that in with something, that's fine. And then you can choose your cloud provider here, whether it happens to be AWS, GCP, or Microsoft Azure. And again, quite a bit of configuration that you can do here. You can choose your region. With the free shared tier, I think you're limited, but here, if I was so interested, I could choose something a bit physically closer to me, Europe West 2, London, for example, on AWS. A couple of options there that I think you can generally leave, and then all you need to do is just click on next. Okay, it might be slightly different from your account. As I said, this is a slightly customized account for marketing. Workspace details here. Okay, again, you can take the default. You're welcome to do that, or just give it a name. And then here you can really configure in terms of what you want to run. I find this smallest configuration, which is an S00, this is two virtual CPUs, 16 gigabytes of memory. And for London, it will burn through 0.28 credits per hour. I think if you choose Virginia, it's 0.25, slightly cheaper. And that, not an enormous amount in terms of usage, but you can happily keep that running for a while. So that's fine. And you have the option here to edit this and configure it to something more if you wish. So here, for example, you can choose more CPUs, more memory. So for an S2, for example, here, that will be 16 virtual CPUs, 128 gigabytes of memory, and that will burn through 2.25 credits per hour in this particular case. Okay, so right. So the reason I'm mentioning this is that for the example that I'll show you very shortly, I'm using this CDC pipeline to read in some data from MongoDB Atlas. And in order to do that, as far as I'm aware, unless it's changed recently, the CDC pipeline does not work on the free shared tier. You do need to have a standard tier. So that's the reason for mentioning that, okay? And the other thing here is that you'll see one of these options, it says SingleStore Kai, and you can enable, disable it here, okay? And so this is built in. You don't pay extra for this. It comes as part of the overall offering. So keep that enabled, and then you just simply need to go down here and say create workspace, okay? Now I've already got something running, okay? So I won't do that. So I just go back and go back here, okay? So in this particular case, I have this already running. Now, there is an associated GitHub repo and an article which I shared with Yukti. She should be posting that into the chat for you as well. Just very quickly, I'll show you the repo. Okay, so it's this. So the example is actually several examples, okay? So there's a couple of data sets here. For example, okay, there's a bookstore and new transactions. We'll be using the bookstore example today. Okay, let me just go back. And there's multiple notebooks as well. Okay, we are using this CDC one. Okay, there's some SQL script here as well. This is specific for the bookstore. Okay, so it shows you the commands that you need in terms of creating the database, setting up the CDC pipeline, and so on. Okay, so I've actually used those myself. Okay, and then a few sort of sample commands as well to show you how to get a bit of information out, as well as a cleanup operation at the end to ensure that you terminate everything at the end and don't leave processes or pipelines sort of hanging. Okay. The article that's associated with this, there's a link to that at the homepage for this, okay, which is this article here on Medium. Okay, so you'll notice that this was actually written way back in September 3rd, 2023. And I thought, well, a great way to test it. Does my code still work? And it does, right? So this walks through the steps, actually makes some recommendations in terms of what you can name your work group, for example, what you can name your workspace, and so on, and then recommended size for the workspace. There's two examples. The retail sales example, as I said, we're not going to cover that today. But the second example here is the bookstore example. The reason for this is that our focus today is very much on vectors. Okay, I just wanted to show you something that utilizes the vector capability as well as SingleStore Kai. And the first example doesn't utilize vectors. The second one does. So it's better that we focus on that. But again, you have the here we go in terms of creating the link to MongoDB Atlas and starting the pipeline, the associated notebook. And there's a kind of a workflow in terms of how we're going to utilize this and create the vectors. And then slight bonus as well, there's a bit of Streamlit, okay, and a very small application that you can build which makes it a little bit more usable. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background and context around that, so SingleStore Kai is the MongoDB API compatible offering from SingleStore, and I'm going to connect to Atlas and get some data from there. Now, the thing is, you don't need to do this, but the thing is, with Kai specifically, I mean, SingleStore supports JSON anyway, right? You don't have to use Kai, but the fact that Kai is included in the title for today's webinar, and we mentioned vectors, it's perhaps useful for you if maybe you are working with MongoDB today, and then you're looking for a solution in terms of perhaps doing analytics, for which we covered a couple of weeks ago. SingleStore's performance in this is far superior to MongoDB's based on some benchmark results. So that was the key thing there. Okay, so we'll come back to this very shortly. All right, so Yukti will share the link to the article and the GitHub repo. Okay, so you're welcome to download those resources in the meantime. And let's just move on. So as I said before, it's a very short in terms of slide content. So a little bit of an introduction there. The standard slide that I always show for architecture, high level view. So we have this concept of universal storage. So SingleStore will happily work with both OLTP and OLAP, okay, single table type that will deal with both of these types of data processing. You can connect to it using streaming data. You mentioned the Kafka event that we've got in a couple of weeks' time. So that's one way that we can get streaming data in. You can happily integrate it with Apache Spark, which we've shown in the past. If you've got other sources of data, say an S3 bucket, maybe Hadoop, HDFS, again, you can connect to these. And this animation here is meant to show that it can read from these sources in bulk, in parallel, at scale. Okay, so SingleStore is a distributed database system, and it can utilize the distributed nature to ingest the data as well. Okay, so happily works on the three major cloud providers in the Western world, which we talked about just a few moments ago, and you can run it on-prem too. We do have customers that do that for various reasons. It may be some legal requirements in terms of the data that perhaps they're dealing with. There may be other particular reasons that they wish to do that, but that's fine too. And SingleStore is also multi-model. Okay, so at its heart, yes, it is very much based around SQL and relational technology, but you can do geospatial, full text search, which Yuki and I covered in December, actually, the new release of that. We have some customers even using it for key value. A little bit rare, but they're doing that. And JSON support has been there for some time. And the JSON support has actually improved dramatically over the last couple of years in terms of performance. So there are some optimizations that were done a while back. And if you are interested, I mean, I'm happy to share that article with you. But what I did a while back was there's a global flag that you can set. So if you're working with JSON, I mean, it's a great way to demonstrate how SingleStore used to do it the old way and then how it did it the new way. And when you do that, you can see the dramatic improvement in performance, orders of magnitude. And that's very useful, but that is kind of totally independent of Kai. Okay, so we're focusing very much on Kai today. So time series as well and vectors. Okay. And then just to round it off, real-time decisions, AI apps, dynamic experiences, dashboards, ad hoc queries, machine learning. Dashboards, whatever is your favorite, Tableau or whatever, very easy to connect to SingleStore. The connection details can be obtained from the portal. I think if you attended one of the recent ones that you'll have seen how I, was using Metabase, running in a Linux virtual machine. Again, very straightforward. All you need is your credentials, the host, port number, and the database that you want to connect to. If you've got that information, which you can get from the portal, very easy. Just plug those details in and you can connect straight away. And very straightforward. Okay, so JSON data. Very popular data format today. Appears in lots of different places: financial data, supply chain, social media, customer analytics, IoT. That was the example I think we used a couple of weeks back there for doing the performance comparison, showing the improvements that you can get with Kai versus MongoDB, logged machine data, telco data, and so on. Okay, so occurs and can be seen in many different places. It's to the point now where you have vendors, if you go back a little bit in time, that for the whole NoSQL, NoSQL movement, began offering database systems specifically around this format. So the likes of MongoDB, for example, Couchbase, and so on. In those days, you're going back sort of 10, 15 years or more, the advent of these whole NoSQL sort of movement. So you had graph databases, you had document databases based around JSON, um, wide column databases, the likes of Cassandra, for example, and so on. Key value stores such as Redis, for example, a variety of different technologies and formats to deal with. But during that time and since that time, the format has become very widely used. As I mentioned a few moments ago, SingleStore has actually supported JSON for a little while, with Kai also being something that's been available in the recent past. And so Kai specifically, it's great if you want to utilize SingleStore for, say, analytics. It's far superior performance. And this is the case of where maybe you are using JSON with MongoDB, could be on-prem, might be on Atlas, for example, and you can just use this CDC replicate capability to get the data from the MongoDB server into SingleStore, uh, perform your analytics. And in this particular scenario, then you're essentially using Mongo as your operational database and SingleStore as your analytical database. So you keep your existing investment. This is kind of a augmentation. You don't lose what you already have, but you use SingleStore for its ability to do the fast analytics. And that's a great scenario. Ultimately, in time, you may decide to replace Mongo completely, in which case SingleStore will happily be both your analytical and operational database. Okay. And then if you need to access your code and you need to access your data, Kai provides this kind of shell, um, this layer that enables you to access that data. And we'll look a little bit of that today as well. Now, it occurred to me when I was just looking at the slides a little bit earlier on, that the third scenario might be in terms of JSON data. Well, maybe you're not using Mongo at all. Okay. Perhaps it's not something that exists in your current setup or your environment. You may be someone that's new to SingleStore, for example. You may be someone that's new to Mongo, and working with JSON data. Given that MongoDB is very popular anyway, okay, I think it is the leading NoSQL database product out there. Chances are you may have some skills in that space anyway, and therefore this gives you the ability to use those skills already and to be able to access SingleStore using a MongoDB compatible sort of API. So you can write your code and be able to access the JSON and without ingesting data from an existing installation. That might be another scenario to think about. So in terms of the demo then, so let's just move forward. So essentially, I showed you a little bit of the CDC replication code. So I'm going to take some data from MongoDB Atlas. So I've got some data about books. Again, I'll show you that in just a moment. And I'm going to read that in using this pipeline. And then what I'm going to do is, as part of that process, because all of this is in sort of JSON format, there's a load process, okay, which is what the notebook actually does. And as part of that load process, it will generate embeddings as well, vector embeddings using OpenAI. Okay, and then these are stored in our SingleStore database in the cloud. And then, yes, you can ask questions from the notebook if you wish. I've got a simple example that illustrates that, and you could improve upon that. I mean, The example is hard coded, but it's very easy. You could just change that to a prompt to repeatedly ask you and output the results. So you just rerun the cell. A better way I thought would be when I originally developed this was to say, oh, okay, let me just build a small Streamlit application that can do this for me more interactively. So I built a small application using Streamlit, and then this allows me to query using semantic search. So I type in my string, what I'm looking for in terms of the types of books or genres that I might be interested in. It will again make a call to OpenAI to convert that into a vector format so that we can run this against the data that we have in SingleStore. So that's really the scenario that we have. So what this shows is that it's very easy to bring data in from an external source if you wish to do so. That's a nice way to do it. And particularly with this kind of CDC pipeline, if you've got existing data, uh, absolutely fine. Maybe there are various reasons that you want to keep your existing install, or as we mentioned a few moments ago, perhaps you're new to this. That's fine too. You can load the JSON data in to SingleStore directly. Various ways you could do that. Keep in mind that because Kai provides MongoDB API compatibility, there are existing tools that Mongo has which will work largely unaffected with Kai as well. Okay, so Kai offers a very high degree of compatibility with MongoDB. I think it's over 92% last time I checked. So that could be very useful. All right. So let me just show you what I've got. So this is my Atlas cluster. And within that, I have a particular database, okay, called Bookstore. And within that, I have a collection called Books. And here is the format for that. Okay, let me just try and draw a box around this just to show you what it roughly looks like. So obviously each uh, entry here in the collection has got its unique object ID. There is a title associated with it. Okay, there's a description. This happens to be, I think, what's the second edition. There's a price field. Uh, in this particular case, the format is paperback. And remember that, JSON is very flexible. So for this particular book, it may just contain this information. However, let me just take a look at the next example here, see if it's slightly different, or find something that's got a bit more in it. For example, let's have a look. So we may have, let's see, off the top of my head, I can't see anything here. So a lot of these seem to be very, very similar, but that's okay. I mean, you may have, for example, the type could be both electronic, could be hardback, could be paperback. Okay, so you'll have three entries there rather than one, right? So that would be like an array. So that is something that JSON gives you. And again, there could be nesting, okay, levels of nesting. So this is one of the benefits of the JSON format. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of structure. Not everything has to look the same, which in a relational table, for example, generally you have to describe what the structure is going to be in terms of the schema. Okay, and it's fairly rigid, but that's again very useful in certain circumstances. It's exactly what you might need. But again, the flexibility of JSON allows you to really have a variety of different forms, representations, if you like, of data based upon how much or how little you want to store. So that's what we have on the Atlas side, okay? And so here, let me switch to this window now. Okay, so what I've done is um, under develop, okay, you'll see Data Studio, okay, which is what I'm looking at now. And in the article, I noticed there's one slight change to the UI that they've made. So there no longer is there an option here along this bar for something called the you know SQL editor. Rather, you can select it from over here. Okay, under the new button, there is this option that says new SQL file. currently in preview. Okay, so if you have that option, that's great. Possibly you're seeing this instead. That's all you need to do. Okay, and I selected that option, and here is the SQL code. So that's exactly the same from the GitHub repo. So I've created my standard install here with an S00. Here you can see I've created my database. Okay, so again, this is just from that script. I've asked SingleStore, I said, use this database. Okay, now the thing is that this drop link command will generate an error the first time you run it because it doesn't exist. That's just there for convenience, but there you can see the details. So we need to provide a little bit of information here. So the details of the hosts are available from the Atlas website, for example, or if you are hosting it somewhere else, you need to provide the sort of the primary. Okay, and it goes off to the left here, but the secondary and the secondary, and there's another one. Okay, this is the database, and we're asking it to input everything from there. Star. Okay, in this case, there's only one collection called books, so that's fine. And then we need to provide our credentials. Okay, so in this case, it's MongoDB admin. The password I already entered previously. I think last time I showed this, I think I was revealing all my credentials. Part of the webinar, I've learned my lesson. Okay, so this time I've kind of just removed it, but that's essentially what you do. And then here, what it will do, this command will, what this will do is this will then interrogate that particular database and that particular collection. It will kind of understand what's there. Okay, and we're using the Avro format here, and it gets the kind of the meta information, the details of the schema, if you like. And then we instruct it to start the pipeline, and then this is the point where it actually starts to ingest the data from this external source. Okay. And so if we look at this across in Atlas, for example, we can see there are 2,000 books currently within this collection. And so when we run this and the pipeline, and remember, this pipeline is active until I stop it. So if new data arrives on the Atlas side, that will get propagated across the SingleStore as well. In this particular case, it's finite. There's only 2,000 entries. That's fine. But what we can do then is here, we can say, show me the table. Okay, and let me just move this up and show you this. Okay, so the table will be books. Okay, don't worry about these other entries here. Okay, they are kind of next steps. And then if I say select count star from books, because the replication process is very fast. If I run this, it tells me there's 2,000. Okay, so that matches what we have. And then I can say, okay, describe this for me. Show me what this actually looks like. And it tells me that the structure is like this. It's got an ID field, which is of type BSON. There's a more field here, which is of type BSON, okay? And then we've got this $_ID of type long blob, okay? So there's certain things that SingleStore will keep for itself, but it will bring that across. And then simply I can ask this, I can say, okay, select the ID, okay, type it to a JSON, do the same for more here. From this books, limit it to one. Let's just have a look at one of these. And then here you can see is the unique object ID, which is brought across, and then all of the JSON data. Sorry, my magnifier will only show a certain part of that. It gets a little bit overwhelmed. But there you can see the kind of the structure, the key values is essentially that is all of the data that we had on the Atlas side. Okay, so it's brought all of that over successfully. And like I said, that pipeline will keep running until I kill it. So if there's new data that arrives, it will get propagated across here. So essentially what it does is it takes a snapshot, okay, and then anything after that, any new data, it will propagate that and happily consume that on this side. Okay, Now, the thing in terms of the notebook is that you'll see under this option here, okay, new, you'll see there is an option that says here import from file. Okay, so that's all you need to do. Just point it to the Jupyter notebook and it will import that for you. And here is the notebook itself. Okay, the thing that you need to ensure at the top is that you are pointing to the correct workspace and that the database is selected. Okay, and you can do that using this pull down. Okay, so make sure that these are correctly pointing to the right resources. I have to be especially careful in this environment because I am sharing this with other colleagues. They've created their own databases and own workspaces. So for you, it'll be a lot easier because presumably, I mean, you're doing this for yourself and therefore you will only have one or possibly the free shared tier and a standard. So it'll be easy for you to select that. But essentially, what the notebook does is basically it's just most of it is just helper functions. So we just install some software. Now, I realize this is an old version of OpenAI. Remember, this was 2023 when this was originally written, but still works, okay? And you can happily update this as well. It shouldn't be a problem, but just for the sake of consistency, so that I'm running exactly what I've shared with you, and if you try and run it, you should get the same results. I wanted to keep that, and then you'll see that I'm also got NumPy and PyMongo there, and those are the libraries and packages that I need. And then here we just go through the standard install, just doing some imports. Okay, we just set some constants. So here it will prompt me for my OpenAI API key. There is a better way to do this. Okay, we have this concept of secrets that is available as well. So I could store that and just read that in. But here it just prompted me for that, and it's stored it here. You can see it's kind of hidden the characters there. And then we just provide some details here. The name of the database, bookstore, the collection name, books, and then what we're going to create, as we create the vector embeddings, we are going to do it in a new collection. And it's going to be called books with embedding. Okay, so we don't do it directly within the books. Okay, and we can set some variables here. Okay, so we create the client, Mongo client. So you'll notice here this thing called connection underscore URL underscore Kai. So this is something that's available in the environment. Okay, so let me just go back here for a second and then just show you. So here you can see that in your workspace, oops, pardon me, I'm just trying to do too much. There's this connect button. Okay, so if I select this, it's got a number of options available. So CLI client, SQL IDE. So it provides connection information for all these. And then here, one of the options you'll see is MongoDB client. Okay, so if you select this here, you'll see that it gives you this long string. Okay, and you see that the password is hidden, okay, but it's up here and you can reset it if you wish. First time you run it and you take a look, it will actually show you the password. Subsequent times it will hide it, okay? So it will tell you the details that you need, and this is necessary for Streamlit, okay? Because if you're going to connect from an external source, we want to use Kai and we want to use this connection string. So it gives you everything here. It tells you the user ID, okay, your password, that very long connection string, host, the port number, okay, and then a little bit of extra information here. The auth mechanism plain and TLS is true, load balance is true, and so on, okay? So this is all you need. You can get that from here, okay? So let's go back here. Okay. So as I said before, a lot of the code within the notebook is just helper classes, just to assist with the process. So they are very much, as you can see, in terms of function to create an embedding using the OpenAI embeddings API. Okay, so that's very straightforward. And for this particular case, we're using text embedding Ada 002, still supported by OpenAI. I think they've got another couple of options there as well. So if you want to try those ones, that's fine too, but this will work. Okay, function to convert data into binary data, and so on. Function to retrieve metadata from the database to check if the value of the last book embedding number was changed to start the load step, pardon me, and so on. Okay, so all of these, as I said before, you can see lots and lots of helper functions here, and just run through those. And then essentially here is the if you are familiar with the aggregate framework from MongoDB, I mean, Kai supports it as well here. So we are just doing a couple of operations here. We're adding a field, we're doing a projection, we're doing a sort, and then we're limiting to 5. Okay, this is kind of for the retrieval, for the search, for getting back some results. And for the similarity search here, it's using dot product. Okay, so this dot product is unique. It's an extension that we provide at SingleStore for use with Kai. Okay, Euclidean distance is the other one. And this operation here, because I've run this already, I don't need to do this. The data are already there. So we've got two things that we need to do. Load the source, and once that's done, load the embeddings. You know, generate the embeddings, create that collection. And if I go across to here, you'll see that now after that operation, I have this select star from books with embedding limit 1. Let me take a look at that, and you'll see that a lot of this is unreadable, right? So here we go. All these weird characters. Okay, so this is what the data actually look like. And this one's a bit better. So most of that is text. So there is a way that you can check that. So we simply typecast these fields again. So we typecast the underscore ID field to JSON here. Okay. The embedding field we typecast to vector. Okay. And I know for a fact that OpenAI for that particular embedding, it uses 1536 dimensions. So we do that. And then we do it to JSON. Okay. And then we do the more field as well to JSON. And if we do this and run this, now it gives us something a bit more readable and a bit more usable. Okay, so pardon me, let me just move this up. So here we are. So again, here you can see the object identifier. Here are the vectors that have been created for us. Right, so this is now in a somewhat human readable format, much better for us. But remember, as far as SingleStore is concerned, it doesn't care. Now, the binary format is better for it, but we like to just to check. I think as a sanity check, just make sure the stuff is actually there, and so that's helpful. And again, here you can see the key values being created here as well. So very, very straightforward. And now that all of that's been sort of we've taken the books data from the books collection. We've used OpenAI to create the vector embeddings. We've created a separate collection now to store that. And then now we can just do a search here. So the search here is a very simple one. As I said before, this is hard coded, so maybe not very convenient. But essentially, I'm just asking the question here. Recommend, well, or just making the request. Recommend books from the horror genre. So if I run this here, you can see what I get back is JSON. So it pulls all of the records back. And so I've got description fields. This one is of type paperback, for example. Here you can see again this example where subjects is a huge list. The description is much more in depth, still paperback format. I think some of these, let's have a look, see if we can. This one is hardcover. There isn't an example here, I think, where it's multiple formats. But we're just pulling back 5, okay, just to take a look. So working with JSON, very easy. Kai makes it super easy, especially if you are working with MongoDB already, but you don't have to be. Okay, gives you that compatibility. CDC is a great way to get the data in. And so at this point, then let me just make this smaller. and we'll switch to the virtual machine. Okay, let's close this. Just give me a sec, and let's just find it here. Okay, there we go. That's it. Okay, so I think hopefully it's still alive, and just needs my password. Okay, so there we go. So Streamlit application, very simple. Now you'll see there's a warning error here, a deprecation. Okay, so it's telling me that there is something that's changed, which is fine. I left that there again deliberately. I could have fixed it, but it's a very simple fix. It's just essentially changing this to this. That's all it is within the code. Obviously, Streamlit has evolved slightly since I originally wrote this code, but this is a much nicer way. So here, for example, in terms of the box, I could simply say, okay, let's see, I am interested in books about science fiction. Okay, let's see. There we go. And it's pulled back 5 records for me. So this, as you can see, is somewhat better in terms of presentation. It's, we get back the title in this case. We get back part of the description, not all of it. Okay, so we chop it off, as you can see here. We've got some dots here to indicate that there's more, but if you pull back everything, it kind of overwhelms the display here, which is, again, not what I wanted to do. I do realize that for some reason that the price column seems to be a bit squashed there. I'm not sure what's happened. Again, I think some changes to Streamlit, so that's a small fix that would need to be done. But again, very straightforward. This is now just asking the single store using Kai. Okay, so the connection string, you saw, I shared that with you a little bit earlier on. That's all I need within the code. The article and the GitHub repo, again, have the code for the Streamlit application. Just plug the connection details in. The rest of it is, again, very similar in terms of aggregation framework. And then all I'm simply doing is just formatting that nicely to present it in a kind of table format here, rather than the JSON that you saw in the notebook, which is okay, but sometimes it's just a bit too much information. So this, you can see, very simple and straightforward to do. So key lessons here is that managing JSON, particularly if you're working with MongoDB and you see this as a benefit, super easy to do. Even if you don't use MongoDB, you can use JSON anyway. You don't have to use Kai. Okay, Kai is nice in terms of giving you this layer of compatibility with a very well and widely used database product in the NoSQL space today. Equally, getting the data in from external sources, super easy to do. And then just creating these vectors, very straightforward. You choose whatever is the particular provider that you want to use to create the embeddings for you. Today, OpenAI was the example that I used. Equally, you could think about using, say, Olama or virtual LLM or something, perhaps doing a local install. We talked about that in a previous webinar not very long ago. That might be a possibility. Again, it's something that you do within your environment then, rather than using an external source. But then building a very simple front end to it is a great way to interrogate that and ask meaningful questions. And if you're interested, one of the things that we have, and I think it's here. So you'll see one of the options here, it says here, code with squirrel. Okay, so if I enable this option here, this is an example of effectively using this concept, not specifically Kai, but taking data from our forums, our documentation, blog posts, etc., and converting it into vectors, storing it in a vector format, and then giving you the ability to ask questions. And if there's something specific, there's a single store command that you're looking for, or maybe an example, you can do that and you can ask Squirrel and it will give you back a response using all of that data. So that's perfectly possible. And this is available outside of this platform as well. Okay, there we go. So there's the article that I mentioned. Okay, so that goes into a bit more detail. So as I said before, it's got two examples, but the second one here specifically using vector embeddings, super easy to do. And then here's the application. As I said before, you see there's some minor niggles. Keep in mind this was 2023. This was, so I'm rather pleased everything still works, but there's a couple of deprecation issues there. This is an example that I presented with my colleague Joel some weeks ago, build a ChatGPT super app. So here you'll see something very similar. So we are again importing data from Mongo, but rather than using Kai, we use just standard SQL. And we use the built-in JSON functions that come with SQL and SingleStore to do the queries and then looking at various fields and so on. So this one, you have another option as to how you interrogate and how you access the data if you wish. Okay, so if you want to keep it as much around SQL, for example, you can do that. If you're happy to use Kai and the aggregation framework, for example, that's great too. That's another possibility. Um, Now, in case you're wondering, how well does this work with these leading frameworks such as LangChain and Llama Index? A while back, earlier this year, in January sort of timeframe, I took the opportunity just to do some quick evaluations. So this is on Medium. I wrote 3 articles. So the original was to look at this using LangChain's MongoDB Atlas vector search with SingleStore Kai. Very straightforward. I was able to take an example from LangChain for MongoDB Atlas vector search, make some tiny modifications, and then added the index as well, and that worked fine. And then similarly here with Llama Index, again, just taking their example, and then here replacing MongoDB Atlas with SingleStore Kai in LangChain. How easy was that to do? Very easy as well. So there are additional possibilities. So if you are working with these frameworks and you're kind of looking at Mongo and perhaps looking at Kai and then deciding is it worthwhile to invest the time and effort to do this? I would say yes. Okay. Again, a word of caution. By default, I think within SingleStore, we don't, simply because it's too much work to do. We can't possibly test Kai with every single tool that's available on the market. It would be very challenging for us as a company. But given the fact that we are very highly compatible with the Mongo API anyway, the chances are that if you are using some tool that works with Mongo, it will probably work with Kai as well. Now, I say the word probably because you may need to make some small changes. And as a kind of an example of that, so with this Atlas vector search, for example, one of the small changes I had to make was that rather than using a hyphen, for example, using an underscore in one particular case, simply because SingleStore doesn't like the use of hyphens for index names, I think. So that was the small change that I had to make in terms of getting it to work with Kai. But again, these are examples available on the Medium website. Okay, so we've done that. So done a little bit of a summary. So if this is kind of interest to you and you think, well, all of this looks interesting. I have a business problem. I have a business challenge. I need help. SingleStore provides this Go Live acceleration program where we can essentially work with you hand in hand, assess your current environment, work with you to do a design and plan, data migration and validation, post-migration support, and cutover as well. Okay, so that's entirely possible. So there is a program in place that we can help you. The standard, we are hiring. Okay, so if you're interested, singlestore.com/careers/jobs. And then my standard slide for any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So Kai does a really good job. I was very pleasantly surprised. I mean, in the past, I have used MongoDB, the local install, and to some degree Atlas, which has some additional capabilities as well. And overall, it's been a very pain-free process in terms of getting data across into SingleStore. For many of the demos and the webinars that I've done, I've been very pleased with the results. Today, as you can see, it's very simple and straightforward, not particularly challenging in terms of creating the vectors, OpenAI. And by the way, in case you're wondering what's the cost of this, I think it was less than 1 cent. I looked at my account a little bit earlier on. So the cost of creating those embeddings, plus running a couple of queries, where obviously the query has to be converted to a vector format as well, and then we do the similarity search. The account showed that the cost was 0.01 cents, less than something like that. It's a very, very tiny cost overall. Okay, there we go. Thank you for that. So we do have some time. So Yuxi, I will leave it to you and come up with if there are any particular questions that are burning and need answering straight away.
There's a
More
lot
than
of
happy to.
questions for you, Akmal. So first of all, thanks for the session. And we like the Q&A button is I hope it's accessible to you. So if it's possible, like you can read through it and answer the most relevant ones which you feel like.
Okay, all right. Let me have a look. Let me just try and see if I can get this up on there. Francis, you're saying hello. Oh, hello, sir. So, so we go. So Nick, you said, please send a short description of what is single store and JSON about. Send me. Oh, yes, we can do that. We can do that. So essentially, keep in mind that single store is it's more than a database system now. As you can see, it's a platform. Okay, so we support OLTP, OLAP. Okay, its roots are in OLTP, in-memory processing. MemSQL is what both the product and the company used to be called some years ago. And with all the multi-model capabilities now, and of course today everyone is talking about agents, agentic AI. Okay, that's the integrations, and then GPU support. So GPU support, you'll see that in the portal as well, and lots of cool stuff in the pipeline, which you'll see in the very near future too. Okay, so it is the benefits that you get from being, if you're coming from it from a business perspective, if you are a CEO or a manager, for example, and you're wondering, how does this help me? Well, it helps you because one product supports a wide range of capabilities. You pay for just that one product. There is no database sprawl. That improves your return on investment, reduces your total cost of ownership. From the developer perspective, from the technical perspective, what's the benefit? It is that you, as a developer, you only need to learn one product. It's kind of like that 80-20 rule. So SingleStore will happily support the vast majority of use cases. So for example, today you may be thinking, okay, I need JSON support, but you may not require anything else. You might not be doing any geospatial or time series, for example, but that's fine. Keep in mind that all of those capabilities are available. So 6 months time, a year from now, you might say, okay, I now need to work with some time series data, or I've got some geospatial data I need to work with. The thing is, those are already baked into the technology. It's not something you have to acquire or use something extra or use external libraries or something to do. They are available for you to use straight away. Okay, so that's the benefit. So Peter, you've got a question. Can Kai or other API allow a Mongo API to write into SingleStore directly? Not as an input step, but in ongoing fashion. Yes, it should be possible. Keep in mind that Kai is MongoDB API compatible. As I said before, it's 92%. Last time I checked and was told compatibility. So obviously, and as far as I know, nobody who does this out there. There are other companies and other providers that provide tools and technologies, do sort of similar sort of stuff. I don't think anybody is 100% compatible, right? Remember, MongoDB, in terms of their product, their technology is proprietary to them, okay? We don't have insights into a lot of the things that they do. We can only reverse engineer based upon the commands and how they operate and what sort of results they return. And that's how essentially the product has been built. So yes, you should be able to do that directly into Kai. Okay, I would try it, check it, test it, okay, and see if it works for you. It should do so. Keep in mind the CDC does a pretty good job anyway, so that will bring over the data for you. But if you specifically do want to connect using Mongo directly, then try it out. That should be good. So Vincent, you got a question. Is the JSON data being transformed to rectangular format in the loader, or is it stored as JSON? So remember when we set up the CDC pipeline, do you remember I mentioned Avro in the so Avro is being used, but the how it stores it internally, that's a great question. I need to look into that. What is the actual storage format? Now we can certainly query it and we can certainly see it. So SingleStore has got its own mechanism to store the data, and ultimately at a low level there will be bits and bytes, blocks, pages. So that's a great question. So thank you for that, Vincent. So I'll look into that, uh, and educate myself. But what I would say is I wouldn't worry about it simply because the performance tests that we've done, and if we can share the webinar that Yukti and I did not so long ago, actually a couple of weeks back, I think, where there's an IoT benchmark plus ClickBench. SingleStore comes out on top in both cases. In some cases, the performance is like 1,000x better. And the other thing to note is that certainly as far as the API is concerned, you saw the aggregation framework. I showed that to you quickly in passing. And we interrogated the data using SQL as well, and then just use the typecast to get it out as JSON. It just gives us that. So as users, we can certainly see everything as JSON if that's what we want. How SingleStore manages it behind the scenes is a different issue. But if you're interested at that sort of level, what does it actually do in terms of mapping that and storing that? That's something I'll have to check for you. Okay, but great question. Thank you very much for that. So you're asking what model is used to vectorize the JSON. So remember, we are simply in the notebook itself, we're just using OpenAI. So what we're doing is taking the JSON, the fields, converting them to vectors, storing them. All right. So it's taking the description field and the title, for example, and I think it's those two together, and then that string is being vectorized, and then it's storing those vectors in the new collection that we created. That's what's actually being done. Okay. So I think if you check through the code, you'll see the helper functions. One of them actually tells you what it's doing in terms of creating that vector. Vincent, you got another question. Are there intermediate step between the JSON, the model payload, and the new embedding created? No. So essentially, what it's doing is taking the existing format, which happens to be, well, it's reading in the JSON, and we are separating out the fields, which is specifically title and description. And it's creating the vectors based upon that. Okay, that's what's going across to OpenAI, and then we're getting the vector embeddings back. But the vector embeddings are standard length, 1536, and that's what's being stored. So we are taking that text and we are taking, and because we can store things back in JSON, so the new collection that we have, the books with embeddings, essentially is just storing it back as JSON format. All right. Okay, so we're taking the bits of information that we're interested in, which is specifically the title and the description, for example, and now the vector embeddings, and we're just converting that to the JSON format and storing that back in SingleStore in that very same format. So very easy to do. There we go. Khalid, you have a question? Have you explored extending SingleStore Kai to support multimodal embeddings? That's a great question. Yeah. So multimodal has really come a long way over the last year or two. A lot of these major providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere, etc., now you have the ability, and Google Gemini as well, for example, if you want, you can submit things like images, videos, audio, and you can generate the embeddings for these as well. Very, very useful. I haven't looked at it specifically for this case, but I think that might be a very useful thing to do. And you've added here, there we go, agentic AI pipeline, particularly with LangChain or Llama index agents that require reasoning over structured, unstructured, and perceptual data. That's a great point. So that at the end of the day, remember, if you can represent something as a vector, regardless of what the original representation is, whether that happens to be a text or it happens to be an image or an audio. So remember, for audio, we would transcribe it to convert it to text, and then we can convert it to an embedding. For images, I've used Clip a while back, created embeddings from that, and again stored those in SingleStore, and then you can just match images to it as well. It'll happily do that. So not really difficult, but I didn't look at it for this specific example. So thank you for that. That might be useful as an extension to this particular example. Ketan, you've got does it support for Iceberg? Yes, we do have Iceberg support. That's maybe a topic for another webinar, Yukti. So, but we do, there are on my Medium account, there are examples where I've demonstrated how you could use Iceberg in a couple of different ways. For example, using Spark as an intermediate step, okay? Or you could do it directly using Iceberg, okay, from Python. So there's a variety of ways you could work with it. And the Iceberg, as you know, it's becoming like the industry de facto standard. And SingleStore is monitoring that, tracking that, enhancements, new releases, things like this, and it's all documented in our docs as well. Okay, so if there's something specific you're interested, let us know. Otherwise, I'd strongly recommend just look at the documentation. If you just search there on Iceberg, you'll see the level of support we have. Peter, you got a questions? If we could eliminate Mongo completely, sounds yes, if you wish to do so. The one caveat, as I mentioned before, I mean, check firsthand that all of the operations that you want to run on Mongo will work with Kai, simply because, as I mentioned, I don't think anybody has got 100% compatibility out there. So if you're using something very unique about Mongo or Mongo Atlas, I think that there was a question I was asked recently that Atlas supports things like triggers, for example. Do we support it in Kai? No, as far as I know. And again, I will be corrected if I make a mistake there. Would we support it if there was customer demand? If there is a customer that really, really wants that capability, I mean, that's something, again, it would be a task for engineering to implement that. So my suggestion there, test it for yourself. Check that all of the level of compatibility that you're looking for is available. If it is, yes, you can eliminate Mongo completely. Certainly possible. Here we go. Eugene, we've got a question. Where do you fit into the medallion architecture? Great question. I'm not sure. No, this is new on me. I'll have to educate myself. Okay, it just shows you how much I know. So sorry about that. I'll find out. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Ashish, thank you. Vincent, thanks. There we go. Khalid, what's the biggest challenge you see in using SingleStore Kai for powering retrieval augmented or agent-based AI, especially when combining vector search with real-time JSON updates? I mean, the thing I think that would be relevant today is just the speed of change. Simply look, almost every day there is a new announcement from some provider, some new LLM is released, okay? Some new tool is out there. Everyone's talking about vibe coding now as well, right? Lots of companies are starting to adopt AI seriously. I mean, to the point now where I'm coming across commercial examples where they say, yes, we've implemented it and it saved us X amounts of dollars, and we are happy with the results. Would you go all in for it? My advice would be patient, track, test, do POCs, evaluate for yourselves. Keep in mind that this is only as good as what you feed it, right? So the LLM is likely to hallucinate. There's things it's going to make up, right? So it's important for you to test it, use the appropriate tools, guardrails, safety. Think about these things carefully. Use the kind of temperature settings. Use this kind of mixture of what do they call it? Is it model of expert, mixture experts? It's like one LLM checking the results of another. Okay, because as those of you who attended the last session that Yukti and I did in terms of Olama, it put out a whole bunch of results. Sometimes the answers were reasonable, sometimes they were not. Sometimes it just made stuff up. And therefore, if you are looking for concrete, 100% accurate results, you need to think very carefully about this. I think those are really going to be the challenges. As far as Kai is concerned and technology is concerned, no problem. Whatever you feed into it, it's going to handle it, right? So in this particular case, we use the title and the description from the original books data, and we just happily sent that across to OpenAI to generate the embeddings. We got the result back, we store that, and we can do the semantic search on that. Now, if the title and the description are just, is garbage in, garbage out, you're not going to get anything useful out, right? So it's important to ensure that what you are storing and what you are creating these vector embeddings for is usable and useful, and what you expect. I mean, in terms of how you want to ask the questions and what's your expectation in terms of the results that you're going to get back. So in the recommender system that I built, for example, it gives me back reasonable results because it's got reasonable data to work with. And again, you set things like the temperature, you force the LLM to try and give you the best answer possible without hallucinating. And then you can give it instructions to say, if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. All right. Things like that. There's simple things that you can do to help you with that. Okay, so we are well over time. So I've done my best there. And so thank you very much for all those great questions. So as I said before, look at the GitHub repo, look at the article. It will help you, walk you through the steps. Create your free account. You'll get $600 worth of credits. Yes, I used OpenAI, but what I would say to you is that I created an OpenAI account. I've actually created several over time, but the last one I created, I just added $5 to it from my credit card. That $5 is, I've used about half of it, okay? So the cost of doing a lot of these semantic searches at small scale, okay? I mean, keep it reasonable, right? If you want to do some small scale tests, it's not going to cost you very much. It's very, very small in terms of what in terms less than 1 cent for the examples for today, and that's tiny. So you're looking at 2,000 books plus the a couple of times that I ran the semantic search in terms of doing some recommendations from Streamlit. Tiny cost, so it's quite reasonable in terms of how much you would pay for this, in my humble opinion. Okay, there we go. And Yukti, over to you.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining. And we are at the end of the session. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at webinars@singlestore.com. And I hope you liked today's session. So if there's any feedback regarding to today's session, feel free to drop a message to me on LinkedIn, or you can also reach out to Akmal, or if you prefer emailing us, you can directly email us at webinars@singlestore.com as well. Any feedback is appreciated. We would love to know about the future sessions, like what you would like to see. And if there's any projects that you are working on, you would like to share it with us. And if you think that we can do a webinar on that, we'd love to hear that. So thank you again, and have a great rest of the day or the great rest of the night. So yeah, thanks Akmal for doing this amazing session with us, and I hope to see you all again. Okay, bye.
Bye bye.